Terrance, this is me responding to your paper 2. Controversy between SpaceX and astronomers. The controversy between astronomers and SpaceX and the launch of Starlink satellites has been an ongoing problem between the two groups since the launch of these satellites on 24 May 2019. It's the European way. Everybody else does dates, except for us, I think. In that way, that makes more sense. SpaceX planned to have 12,000 satellites in Earth's low orbit, or LEO. This mega constellation was created with the purpose to provide the entire planet with access to fast internet. While the other side of the controversy created by astronomers while the other side of the controversy created by astronomers feel the launch of many SpaceX Starlink satellites will cause a rise in space junk, light pollution, and harm astronomical observations. Okay. Introductions are so hard, right? I think that last sentence, as you were hearing me kind of stumble through it, you just have some wording stuff to iron out. And I will say again, don't be afraid to make it 2 sentences or even 3, to have some very short but very clear sentences. Very clear is what we're going for. SpaceX has acknowledged the argument presented by astronomers and have taken measurements to create a new coating which will be less visible to the naked eye. Ooh. While they have stated the solution, they are currently still rolling out the same satellites which have been causing problems. Furthermore, even the new coated satellites named DarkSat still cause serious reflection of light. Okay, so I feel like in the first paragraph, maybe when you fix that sentence about explaining what their concerns are, it'll feel like more. We need to connect somehow. I guess you need to connect light pollution in this paragraph because I think that's the problem. Anyway, somehow you need to connect which thing is we're really talking about here, which problem. Okay, the idea presented before the U.S. Federal Communications Commission for the deployment of the satellites was stated to be 1,584 invisible satellites, which has now been evolved into more than 40,000 satellites. Okay. I feel like maybe you need a citation here, because although you're saying it's presented before the FCC, we need to know your source here. I don't think that's probably enough. Let me look through to the end. I'm guessing that, yeah, looking at your works cited, it's not clear to me where you got that information, so you need to let us know. Very important. Okay, there's also concern that with this amount of satellites in orbit, Kessler syndrome can come to fruition. This idea is based on space debris. The idea of Kessler syndrome is based on space debris. Let's explain exactly what it is. Sometimes I think when I'm trying to write something more formal, I just get tangled up in words, and it kind of reminds me of this situation here where maybe you just need to say Kessler syndrome is caused by space debris. It is. Okay, I think you're getting into that. Haha. The concept was described great. Let's say it was just described well. Great is kind of informal. For our formal paper, let's say it was described well by motionless debris can disable or cause other satellites to crash into each other, creating even more debris, and this problem spirals out of control in an effect called the Kessler syndrome. And if we reach that, then essentially space is too unsafe to access. Wow, that's bad. Okay, so I feel like so far, the bones of your paper are really strong. I know where you're going, I know what we're talking about, but I think your revision is going to be about, making your connections smoother. In this paragraph, maybe starting with what Kessler syndrome is, and then explaining more about it. Okay. These 9-meter satellites are visible. Wait, what 9-meter satellites? Yeah, I'm confused. Are visible to naked eye because of their positioning to Earth within LEO. These satellites are roughly 550 kilometers, and with this positioning, they are able to reflect the sunlight from the sun across the panels while still being aimed at the ground, causing huge distractions to both customers and skywatchers both. Okay, one little thing here. When you start your sentence with an ing word, like causing, you're very likely to accidentally write a fragment. Um, to make that a complete sentence, you would need to say something like causing huge distractions to astronomers and sky watchers would be a giant bummer, or something more formal than that. Or you need to hook that piece onto the previous sentence. Just put a comma after ground, and what you're doing then is just adding on a little information about what happens when they reflect the sunlight, which would also be fine. Okay, furthermore, out of the 5,000 satellites currently in orbit, only 400 have been visible, while Starlink is said to have 75% of their supposed 40,000 satellites be visible to the eyes of people. Again, we have to have a citation. You have to tell us where that information is coming from. Very important. And probably you can just put in parentheses, like the author of the source that you got this from. Often in scientific writing and this kind of stuff, people aren't really interested in using the exact. They do a lot of referencing where they got stuff instead of using a direct quote. That is, instead of using the direct words from the source. Because in science writing, generally the exact wording of something is less important than the factual information in it. Okay. While dealing with satellites has not been a new trend astronomers have faced, these people have been dealing with the problem for a long time and have created a solution which revolves around creating a median filter set of frames to remove streaks. However, for many science projects, there are overheads associated with each frame that may make slicing the exposure into a larger number of shorter frames infeasible. Whew. Okay, here's another place where I see like your connecting pieces are almost there, but not quite there. We just need some smoothing out. So you're saying, while dealing with satellites has not been a new trend astronomers have faced. What is the new trend? That first piece you have with the while is a lot like the one we just looked at with the ing. That when you start with a small piece like while dealing with satellites hasn't been a trend, or isn't a new trend, you're very likely to write a fragment, which it did. So again, with that piece, while dealing with satellites has not been a new trend, satellites have still been a gigantic, terrible, horrible thing. So yeah, you could hook that small piece again up with something after it maybe, but I think definitely some polishing there would be helpful. And then all this sounds like really good stuff, although I'm learning a lot. It revolves around creating this thing. So with that one, I think I would part of that quote, the median thing, I'd like to hear right after that piece, I'd like to hear that explained just maybe a little bit. But for sure, you need some of your words in between the median filter set of frames to remove streaks, and then you need some more of your own words there to set up for this other part, like why it's problematic. Because your sentence about why it's problematic is down below, right? The solution is not plausible. So yeah, when you're using someone else's words, you want to take out and comment on the one piece you're talking about, and then come and talk about this next part. I think that's a useful quote, but yeah, they just need to be separated. So explain that they're this filter to remove streaks, explain a little bit what that means, and then for many private science projects, there are overheads. Okay. Observation stations are receiving 10 times more streaks than normal, so using the normal method will cause huge gaps in observation. The main concern is pertaining to teams searching for near-Earth asteroids, which could potentially lead to potentially harmful asteroids crashing into Earth in the future. I'm just going to not think about that, okay? That sounds very frightening. Terrance. Okay. You're on it, though, right? Okay. With the development of Starlink created by SpaceX, a new series of satellites are being created by many different companies, further crowding Earth's orbit. Okay. So this first section, I think maybe it was about satellites leading up to. Maybe it's about satellites leading up to the SpaceX new series. But I'm just like imagining that because I have a good imagination. So if that's the case, you need to add something in to kind of set us up for that. So that's super clear. And if that's not what's happening, then make that super clear too. Okay. With the development of Starlink created by SpaceX, a new series of satellites are being created by many different companies, further crowding Earth's orbit. While these other companies are planning to launch similar satellites, they are going to be much smaller and much higher in orbit. So while these satellites will not be visible to the naked eye, they will still hamper the viewing by astronomers. Cool. Here's a place where you did, those other pieces I was talking about, you wrote a fragment. Here's a place you did that and you didn't write a fragment. You started off that sentence with, so while these satellites will not be visible, they will still hamper the viewing. So in this case, so while this, right, that's a fine way to start a sentence, as long as you finish your thought, which you did, so while this is the case, they will not do that. So that's a place where you did it exactly right. Okay, the group set to benefit in the end, and I should say that's a very common thing to need to revise. I mean, very common. Okay, the group is set to benefit in the end of the Starlink project. The group set to benefit in the end of the Starlink project are people living in remote places. Some places have no access to high-speed internet, yep, and with the launch of this new series of satellites, so these people will finally have access to that they need. New jobs can be created in these areas with the introduction of continuous, reliable internet. Also, better communications will be provided with the new implementations. The current Iridium satellites that allow for internet in these areas have heavy delays in connectivity and are only available in certain times of the day. The current internet satellites are stationary, so they continue to move throughout Earth's orbit, not of their own accord. Whoa, I'm really learning a lot here. While these Starlink satellite plan to create multiple constellations throughout the orbit, they will allow for consistent and reliable internet access. Okay. Again, maybe I'm thinking what you're saying is like the first part of your paper was about current satellites, and the second part is about Starlink. After reading this, I'm feeling more like that's the case, but I shouldn't have to be guessing. So if you're talking about current satellites versus Starlink, just make that clear each time you address it. Okay. Astronomers are fighting for their values by taking legal action against SpaceX. The group has taken the case to the International Court of Justice to argue that the night sky is a shared human right and the world... Not the sweetest thing I've ever heard. Sorry, time check. Okay. Group says a case could be filed against the Federal Communications Commission in the U.S. for licensing Starlink, which the astronomers may have been a breach of the National Environmental Policy Act. While many think the cases have a small chance of winning, bringing these cases to court shows solidity in their arguments. It shows solidity in their arguments. Whose arguments? Maybe that's what's confusing me. Okay, just checking to make sure This controversy showed that people in the field of aerospace engineering value control, growth, and success over respect and peace. Whoa. Both sides of the controversy want to have control over Earth's slow orbit and are trying to force the other to conform to their wishes. Astronomers do not want companies to put any more satellites into space, while SpaceX plans to octuple the current number for their benefit. Damn. SpaceX and astronomers both want to see success, but the other is getting in the way. While SpaceX wants their new project Starlink to succeed in being the first of its kind. Oh, there's a place you did it with the fragment. Puppy, I am doing something for someone, and it's not you. Sorry. Respect and peace are showcased as being something aerospace engineers have little value to throughout the controversy. Oh, sorry. I was going to talk about while SpaceX wants their new project to succeed. In that one, you didn't finish your thought. While they want it to succeed, astronomers desire, I think you actually finished that thought in the last sentence in the paragraph. Okay. Respect and peace are showcased as being something aerospace engineers have little value to. I think you mean value for. Throughout the controversy, SpaceX shows little respect to the wishes of astronomers, going so far as to claim to fix the problem while still launching the same satellites the next month. Okay. The next month. Furthermore, Starlink satellites also use some of the same radio frequencies that these astronomers use, interfering with a lot of their work by cluttering the air frequencies. Ooh, little typo there, air frequencies. Also, SpaceX continues to change the parameters of their initial deal. It started at 12,000 and has now grown to 42,000. This number could continue to grow. Okay, end of part 1.